Hello, you beautiful people. I was in the middle of taking notes for my Shenhe guide when I realized that Kujou Sara is getting another buff, and I find that to be absolutely fascinating. Not at the fact that they want her to be a playable character, but in the way that miHoYo did it and how they keep finding ways to make her more beneficial than Bennett in certain situations. If you didn't know, Kujou Sara had a very, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, you were better off finding food out of a Macy's trash bag than finding a use for Kujou Sara. She was one of those characters that was just terrible. She was the first ever do not pull in Genshin Impact because she was just so bad. But what made her so bad? Well, it was due to her competing directly with another character that had been out since launch who did just about everything better. This character is Bennett. Both Sara and Bennett are able to grant an attack buff based off their base attack, with Bennett's being a higher portion. He also grants healing and is pyro, so he can passively grant even more of an attack bonus than Sara just based off his element. Bennett is also easier to use, as he could just swap in, then use his burst, then swap out, and all his party members would gain the buff. Kujou Sara never had that luxury. She would apply her buff using her next charge shot after using her skill. This would leave an icon on the ground that would explode after a duration. When it does explode, it deals damage and grants her attack buff to any character in the explosion. So only one character in your party would get the buff. The only way to grant it to your entire team is to have her at C2. Use her skill, switch out, then back in, use her charge shot, switch out, then back in, and then use her burst, and then switch to your main carry. Incredibly tedious and lackluster since her buff is not only worse than Bennett's but also lasts less time. However, Sara was better in certain situations, that being that she has constant application of her buff, especially for a single target. Her buff can move with the target, and her buff lasts off field. The only other real feature she came with that made her better than Bennett was her C6, which boosts electro crit damage for the duration of her buff. It finally seemed like she had a purpose. Just by that one constellation, there seemed to be some glimmer of hope for her. She would be an Electro Bennett specifically to boost their damage. She had a niche and she was going to be amazing at it. Spoilers, she wasn't. There was one huge issue with this constellation that completely shut her down. Before I straight up tell you the issue, I feel like an example would be nice. Let's take a look at our Electro roster. We have an Electro sub DPS in Fischl, Beto, and Lisa. We have our on-field main DPS characters with our physical DPS Razor and either physical or Electro main DPS Kaching. And lastly, we have our on-field Electro support DPS character, the Raiden Shogun. I bring this to your attention because Sara's Constellation 6 does not snapshot, meaning the little edge she had on Bennett due to her higher damage buff just got lobbed out the window. But why is that? Well, it's because throughout the duration of Fischl's Oz, or Beto's Burst, or Lisa's Burst, each one of these characters will average in less damage than just the snapshot of Bennett's Burst. They would have more damage to start, only for it to plummet after the initial duration of Sara's buff. So now the Electro sub-DPS characters can't use her, the physical characters can't use her because they don't use Electro, meaning she only has an Electro main DPS Kaching and a main DPS Raiden Shogun to buff. There's also main DPS Lisa, but that's generally not why you are using Lisa because she can't really serve too well as a main DPS. With Kaching not being popular and Raiden finding use without Sara instead getting bundled with Eula or the national team, Sara quickly got left behind as she became a character that fit in nowhere. Her best options were either forgotten or forgot her. There really was not a good looking future for Sara. Then Itto the Evil made his entrance not only with a brand new kit with brand new mechanics, but also with brand new stat priorities. Itto's teams consist of strong defensive characters that scale their damage off of defense. Even Itto himself scales with defense, but in his burst, he is able to turn it into attack. His teams also all consist of mostly Geo characters, leaving at most one slot open for another character to help out. With Geo being Geo, any form of Anemo contribution is completely negated. Lack of grouping, lack of more than one pyro character for resonance, and lack of attack buffs needed for the entire team, meaning that Bennett is practically completely rejected from the equation. That brings Sara. a character whose buff is able to move with the main DPS and can be constantly applied to him as well. With a comp where only the main DPS requires any attack buffs, Sara finally found a spot. Not only any spot either, but one she can decently work in at lower constellations, perhaps even without any at all. In this situation, she is also able to serve as a burst DPS character as well. Sara found a small niche in a strange place, one I doubt anyone expected, but it is a role that Bennett can't fill quite as well. Another spot she works well in? Well, perhaps with a character that loves a high attack and works absurdly well with current stats and while being off-field. That's where Shenhe comes in. But this is also where it gets slightly weird, since Shenhe is a support specifically for cryo. Combining their elements makes superconduct, which is only good for physical characters, meaning they would have to pair together with Eula, who works better with Bennett and or the Raiden Shogun than Sara. So it's a little weird. Kinda works. So it is strange, but it can possibly work more in the future, with releases like Yaimiko and Itto somewhere on the horizon. However, this is still a nice little glimmer of hope for Kujou Sara, like I said before, as she might be able to take Raiden's place in this comp, in the Eula comp, and might be able to overtake comps later in the future, like I said before. I'm glad that they are giving some air to this girl whose head has been buried in the dirt for so long. Other characters like Ayato, Ye, and Yunjin may also help make Sara a worthwhile character, but viability from her will most likely come very far down in the future. She is finding some niches where she can be useful, but these are so much less apparent than in other characters like Gorou or Shenhe. That being said, I do hope that they continue indirectly buffing Sara. I would love to see all characters in this game be relevant to some degree and not benched in your teapot for aesthetic purposes. Characters like Sara, Amber, Chi-Chi, Toma, and some others really deserve the chance to shine, maybe not to the same degree as Zhongli or Ganyu, but in a way that is fitting to them. What do you think of Kujou Sara right now? Is she still just as bad as she was when she launched? Do you think she even got buffed at all, or will be buffed in the future? Tell me your opinions on her in the comments down below. I would love to see them, and if you did like the video, I hope you like and subscribe to my channel, as it costs nothing and can be reversed at any time if you change your mind. But with that, I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye!